Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Barnes & Noble Encinitas, and let's give a big round of applause to our poets for joining us tonight. Thank you all so much for coming. Why don't we start right over here? Introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourselves and your books. Take it away.
Hello, I am Briana Muñoz. I am a poet, author, indigenous dancer, and so much more. I currently live in LA, and my title, or my book, is Everything is Returned to the Soil. It's a bilingual poetry collection published by FlowerSong Press.
Hello everyone, my name's David A. Romero. I'm a Mexican-American spoken word artist and poet. I performed at 75 colleges and universities in 33 states in the US. I'm very excited to be soon heading off to Italy to perform there for the first time, Paris to perform there for the first time as well. I actually have a slight cold today, so my apologies for anything. Yeah, you know, health. X, you know. Yeah, for anything today.
Hey, my name is Sonia Gutierrez. I'm a poet, I'm an author, I'm a writer, I'm a professor locally at Palomar at the University of San Marcos. And this is Premio Mariposas. It won the Tomás Rivera Book Award. This is my compañero de FlowerSong Press, Matt Sedillo.
All right, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I'm Matt Sedillo. I'm the author of Mowing Leaves of Grass, and as well as Sitting on the Second Floor. Mowing Leaves of Grass came out in 2019, last month, so really 2020, but came out in December of 2019. And Mowing Leaves of Grass, and Sitting on the Second Floor came out in February, I think, of this year. So those are my two books. They're both with FlowerSong Press. I'm very excited to be here doing a flower song reading. If you read the blurbs, I've been called the best political poet in America, but you know, that's subjective. So, but it's pretty good. I'm pretty good at that. So that's yeah.
Yeah, so I want to kick off today's reading as well by thanking Harrison, as well as Alexis and all of the staff here at Barnes & Noble for hosting us. It makes a huge difference, especially to have people who make signs and buy the books and do everything that they promise. Is really wonderful. So as FlowerSong Press, our press is based in McAllen, Texas. We nurture essential verse from, about, and through the borderlands, the voices of those from Latin America, the US, and all over the world. We are literary, lyrical, boundless, and we welcome allies that understand and join in the voice of people of color and our struggle, truth, and hope. So our panel today consists of poets and writers who have performed our poetry around the world, sold thousands of copies of our books, had our work published in dozens of literary journals and newspapers, performed at hundreds of colleges and universities, been taught at dozens of colleges and universities, and have also engaged in powerful work to uplift and transform our communities. So our first reader today, because he has a hot date with poetry back in Los Angeles, is Matt Sedillo. So I'm going to go ahead and read his bio if that works for you. So Matt Sedillo has been described by journalists and historians alike as the best political poet in America, as well as the poet laureate of the struggle. His work has drawn comparisons in print to Bertolt Brecht, Roque Dalton, Amiri Baraka, Allen Ginsberg, and countless other legends of the past. Sedillo was the recipient of the 2017 Joe Hill Labor Poetry Award, a panelist at the 2020 Texas Book Festival, and a participant in the 2011 San Francisco International Poetry Festival. He will participate in the 2022 Elba International Poetry Festival as well. Sedillo has appeared on C-SPAN, been featured in the Los Angeles Times, Axios, the Associated Press, NPR for the Southwest, the Kenyan Review, Pacifica Network, and the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, among many other publications and broadcasts. Sedillo has spoken at Casa de las Americas in Havana, Cuba, at numerous conferences and forums, such as the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity in American Higher Education, the National Association of Chicano Studies, the Left Forum, the U.S. Social Forum, the Left Coast Forum, the Worker Cooperative National Conference, the Association of Writers and Writing Programs, and at over 100 universities and colleges, including the University of Cambridge. Matt Sedillo is the author of Mowing Leaves of Grass and City on the Second Floor, both of which are taught at universities throughout the country as coursework.
Woo!
Please, welcome Matt Sedillo.
Thank you, David. Don't let the hoodie fool you. All right. So that's some poems. I'll do two from Mowing Leaves of Grass and two from City on the Second Floor. Sundown, Levittown, Fort Apache, Dirty Harry, John Wayne, Blackface, Minuteman, Moynihan, Gone with the Wind, Breaking Bad. Washington Redskin, Confederate flag, the sword, the dollar, the cannon, the scholar, the cavalry, the Ivy League history, as written by lightning, is the rising smoke of burning village. The ways and means victors keep their victims. The frontier these some notes on the state of Virginia, extraction, expansion, the winning of the West, Lewis and Clark, Smith and Weston. I'll circle the wagon with bloodshed and slave sweat, the crack of the whip. The law of 3/5, the crown republic of King Cotton, the intended failures of Reconstruction, the housing covenants that greeted great migration to the Saints, the Mexicans, and poor Mexico. So far from heaven and so close to Monroe Doctrine. To Davy Crockett. To prison industrial complex, a war on drugs is a war on our young. Bloody Christmas. Reefer Madness. 15 to life for 4 ounces, East Oakland. West Baltimore. South of La Brea and Oliver North, Plymouth Rock. Jamestown. The Rio Grande. Stolen lives. Stolen land. Some were born in summer homes and palatial groves where pain was only to ever unfold from the pages of secret gardens where the red fern grows, but not I. See, I come from the stock of star-eyed astronauts who greet the night sky with big dreams and wide eyes, always running down the Devil's Highway through occupied America, all the way back to house on Mango Street, and all the books he wants to read. There's a handball off the back wall of a panaderia born east the river, post Mendez versus Westminster, one generation with red lines. And diplomas that were signed with those dreams. And that skin need not apply. See, I come from struggle. And if my story offends you, it's only because you made the mistake of seeking your reflection in my self-portrait. See, this wasn't going to be about you. Someone born in the Common Core. Reflected faces grace the pages of doctrine discovered and age to be explored. Where old world hardships crashed against new shores, New England, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, for others pushed off Turtle Island. Aslan, do not call this brown-skinned immigrant. Child of the sun, son of the conquest, Mexicano blood, running through the veins the east side of Los Angeles. Do not tell him El native tongue the song will best be sung. Do not tell me who I am, because I was raised like you. Miseducated in some of those very same schools off lessons and legends of honest Indians and Christian pilgrims and a nation of immigrants all united in freedom. That isn't until they pulled aside my white friend, pointed directly at me and said, Scott, I judge you by the company you keep, and you spend your time with this. That same old story is 1846. The eventual Uncle Sam, the stick up man, wetback. Show me your papers, I'll give me your labor. The melting pot was never made for the hands that clean it. The American dream has always come at the expense of those who tucked it in. You don't know that. They don't teach it. Could write you a book, but you won't read it, so you know it's about you. In 1492, in the Treaty of Guadalupe and California missions and Arizona schools, these racists, they try to erase us as was their kids in cities that bear our names. You can learn some days from Ferdinand to Minuteman, from Arpaio to Alamo, from Popov all came to the Indian as it lives in me from May 8th to 43, trying to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds, Canadian minds that don't strike the Bandeala, Zapata, Joaquin Rieta, Las Adelitas, Brown Berezi, Zapatistas, from Rich Nixon to Napoleon, from Peckinpah to Houston, from Lone Star Republic to Christopher Columbus, all the way down to Donald Trump, we didn't cross the borders crossed us. Who you calling immigrants? Pilgrim. Woo! Those two are from Mowing Leaves of Grass. Named Mowing Leaves of Grass because Walt Whitman was, in addition to being a poet, was also a journalist who wrote of the Mexican-American War, what is miserable, inefficient Mexico with the grand mission of people in the New World with a noble race. And he also wrote a poem called Ode to California that said, California will teach us, will bust American love. And he writes it in the 1850s. And so what is going on in California at the time in the 1850s? We're talking about a period of time of the gold rush, talking about a period of time of what's called the Greaser Act, a period of time was called the Foreign Miners Tax, and these were all laws that were passed, basically vagrancy laws against Mexicans, and which actually would become the model for Jim Crow at a later period in the South. But that was what was going on. This was a period of time of lynch law, a period of horrific laws that really kind of set up the table for the way Mexicans would be treated in the state throughout the centuries, and so. That's what Whitman wrote, and I know that Whitman is considered like the American bard, kind of like the cream of the crop in terms of American poetry, and there's an increasing growing population of Chicanos in this country, and I just don't think it's healthy for people who want to be aspiring writers to look up to someone who would look down upon them. So that is why I wrote a book called Mowing Leaves of Grass. Who am I to say such things? Well, I'm Matt Sedillo, the best political poet in America.
All right.
At least according to Greg Palace. So that's who said that. So these next two poems are from the next book, which is called Sitting on the Second Floor. This one is called, these I don't have memorized. This is a newer book. This one is called Post. It seems like yesterday municipalities raised cities, built nuclear families, associations of sturdy pockets, a two-car garage, a chicken every pot, a military expansion, a man on the moon, and a finger on the button. Tomorrow doesn't show up all at once, but when it does, liquidate the pension. Automate the factory, auction off the options, don't worry about me, I worry free, freelance contingency, smiling at your service to gig economy, side hustle, millennial, post-industrial standard, hire me as an adjunct, fire me as contingent into a city I cannot afford to live in, tell me my credit score, better yet, tell me yours, promise me the world and show me the door. I was not born angry, I was abandoned. I'm your Velveteen Rabbit. The drying pain of Saturn, eating his children, neoliberalism, feasting on the marrow of the past and the present, the jobs of tomorrow, gone today, born sometime after the foreclosure. Tell me another for the fire. Tell me the one where I killed the economy. And so, when I was a kid, they told me I had to get ready for the service economy because the industrial economy, I was born in '81, so I'm told that the industrial economy is leaving. So we need to get ready for the service economy. Then as I started working, around 99, 2000, started getting jobs. I was beginning told that, well, the service economy is kind of going away. You got to get ready for the gig economy. And then now the kids work today. I don't know. The gig economy is giving way to the scrounge economy, the app economy,
The hustle
economy, the hustle economy,
Yeah.
which will give way to the scrounge economy. And who knows what's after that? So this is another one. This one about working. So give it up for everyone who's working here today. For all the cashiers, make it happen every day. So I used to be one. I used to work at a place I really hated. It's called Steinmart. It was the worst, worst place. So anyone not familiar with Steinmarts, how Steinmarts work is that they want to look like a Nordstrom, but they want to pay like a Ross. And so we're not getting paid anything, and they're just beating us down. And I remember the last day I was there, I was like, I'm a human being. I don't have to take, so I quit. Pulled off my name badge, handed it to my boss, and said, no, you don't. Pinned it back on me. I was there for another 6 months. Pride and dignity. No, man. I had rent. I had a car payment. I had a little fridge full of Amstel Light that I wanted to keep putting beer in. It didn't work out for me. But anyways, so this poem's about working. This is the last one. Who's here familiar with Franz Kafka? Okay. So this is based on the Metamorphosis, the first chapter of the Metamorphosis. But instead of a bug, it's an elephant, right? So I stole the idea. I openly admit I stole the idea. Here it is. This is about how my absolute revulsion for working at Steinmart or Big Five or Marshalls or any of those death camps. Anyways, here we go. One morning I had woken with tusks, drifting in and out of sleep like so much of life and scene. I knew this, but I feel alone. The cool air on my back, the reflections of gray shards of glass. I tried to recall the time before, splintered wood, the warmth of sun, daylight in my room, my skin, my limbs, the emails I recalled. Do not forget your emails. A knock on the door, no doubt, the owner of the house, I was certain. Every day she berates my appearance, every day. Fresh new criticisms, how I dress, when I leave, when I return, I work, I rent. All I ask in return is peace, is silence. Now the living lover who does not work, who does not rent, who mocks my appearance, how I move through the world, bulldog of a man, howls in my room, more unsolicited opinion, more threats, more stress, work they say, dress they say, emails, do not forget your emails. I have broken the bed, I cannot get out of bed, I have broken, this isn't fair, this isn't right, it never was, I cannot see the light, a new voice joins the choir, demands more pounding, wake up to work. Your emails. Do not forget your emails. I am your landlord. He is your office boss. She is your landlord. He is your office boss. Hands boom. Voices boom. Demand, demand. I cannot move. This isn't fair. It never was. More threats, more stress. The pounding continues. Demand, demand your emails. Do not forget your emails. The pounding, demand, demand. The demand of light. The door falls. The landlord gasps. The living lover gasps. The office boss gasps. The office boss cries out, my God. There's an elephant in the room. So I'm not Sedillo. I gotta run to another reading in East LA, but please buy my books.
Would you like to switch seats or?
Back a little bit.
Oh my
A
goodness!
little bit.
What drama? What drama? All right. Let me see this. All right, the next reader is myself. So what can I say about myself? I'm a Mexican-American spoken word artist from Diamond Bar, California. I'm the author of My Name Is Romero, a book reviewed by Gustavo Arellano, Curtis Merez, and founding member of Ozomatli, Ulysses Bea. I've appeared at over 75 colleges and universities in 33 different states in the U.S. My work has been published in literary magazines in the United States, Canada, and England. I've opened for Latin Grammy-winning bands Ozomatli and La Santa Cecilia. I've been published in anthologies alongside poets laureate Joy Harjo, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Luis J. Rodriguez, Jack Hirschman, and Tongo Eisen Martin. I've won the Uptown Slam at the historic Green Mill in Chicago, the birthplace of slam poetry. My poetry deals with family, identity, social justice issues, and Latinx culture. I offer a scholarship for high school seniors interested in spoken word and social justice in the amount of $1,000, the Romero Scholarship for Excellence in Spoken Word. Please give it up for me. So, yeah, the first poem that I'll go ahead and recite is the title poem from the collection, My Name is Romero. It happens every single night. Telemarketing Juliets, calling from their ivy-covered balconies, calling for their star-crossed lovers, calling, hello, is Mr. Romeo in? I'm sorry, Romeo went to go grab a burrito, Mercutio to cruise Whittier Boulevard, and Shakespeare to take some ethnic studies lessons. In other words, Romeo isn't in. My name is Romero. I am not Italian. Centuries-old Spanish blood coursing through these veins, though my parents are not from Spain. And despite the Southern Californian accent that allows words like dude, sweet, and sick to tumble gracefully from these lips, I'm not a white guy. I'm a Mexican. My name is Romero. Romero like a brand of tortillas that escaped with Guerrero and Mission from the segregation of the ethnic food section into the main aisles of your local supermarket. My name is Romero. Romero like Archbishop Oscar Romero, zombie filmmaker George A. Romero, actor Cesar Romero. Yes. Before Jack Nicholson, before Heath Ledger, a brown man played the Joker. They dressed him up in purple suit, green wig, and white face, though he would not shave. His trademark suave and sexy Latin mustache. No, he was a Romero. I am a Romero. My parents had dark hair and dark eyes. When I was 7, my brother lied, told me that my father was the mailman. How could you be the son of our parents with your blue eyes and white skin? Well, brother, Buster. Like Jerry Springer or Maori, the DNA results are in. I am a Romero, and I know what some of you are thinking. That I'm just another white guy trying to prove he's a Latino. Or just another Mexican, chest beating his chest, beating whatever reputation he has left in the process, trying to convince you that his family, his country, his nationality are better than you. Well, I know as well as anyone that we are all the children of Africa, roots of no single family tree, but of a flourishing forest that grows collectively towards a magnificent destiny shining, radiating beauty. Just please, close your eyes, and you can see it. But forget that. The name of this poem isn't "We Are the World, We Are the Children." No, the name of this poem is "My Name Is Romero," because if you're not proud of who you are, then what are you going to be proud of? And if you don't know where you come from, how are you supposed to know where you're going? And I know one thing, that the name of my father and my father's father and his father's father before him was Romero. Thank you. Let me go ahead and read. I don't think I've ever read this one in public before, but this is actually the last poem of the collection, and it is the companion piece to My Name Is Romero. The name of this piece is Our Name Is Romero. And I really felt compelled to write this because in putting this book together, this collection, which took over a decade to write and to assemble all of the pieces, I became very interested in genealogy. So our family line is from Santa Fe, as are many Romeros, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we would go on family trips where we would visit the archives and we would look at the microfilm and go through all of that stuff. And as a kid, it was just the most miserable experience that I could possibly imagine. But as I got older and I really started to think about, life and the preciousness of family and knowing where one comes from and what one's story is, I really reflected upon that, and a lot of this book is inspired by the genealogical research that I was doing at the time. So this is Our Name Is Romero. We are artists, nuns, laborers, managers and supervisors, workers and entrepreneurs, housewives and mothers. We are alive and we are buried. We tend to our name yearly. We tend to these stones as my father had done. Our name is Romero. Our name is Romero, like Frank Romero, from Lanfranco Street to Los Four in New York and beyond. Romero, like Sonia Romero, installations on the metro, and she rides the Lion Studio. Our land was Romero in New Mexico until quills touched upon papers, land deeds in Agua Fria made worthless in moments. Most crossed the border. The border crossed us. My grandfather, Edward, born in New Mexico, the fifth child of my great-grandmother, Donaciana, quickly passed away. My great-grandfather, Emeterio, quickly remarried. Edward's Aunt Connie raised him. They left New Mexico, moved to California. 3 brothers in name and blood came from Edward. Frank, Richard, and Gerard. We came from Richard. Our name is Romero. We are Pochos, Chicanos, whitewashed, non-Spanish speaking Mexican Americans. 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th generation. Most do not understand what it is to have come from a state that was once Mexico, and before the viceroyalty of New Spain, and before España, a man of La Mancha, Bartolome II, often confused as the first of his name, a man most likely poor, the first Romero of our line to touch ground upon the shores of the New World. The expedition of Onate, the last great conquistador, ordered Pueblo natives made slaves, ordered Pueblo natives killed, ordered Pueblo natives' legs removed, as punishment for their insurrection. Captain Bartolome Romero was a butcher. He had to have been. Under Onate, Romero was promoted to captain from the rank of ensign. This Bartolome, this Romero, he is a part of us. He gave us our name. What follows is what we make. We tend to our name yearly. We tend to these stones with my father's burlap bag filled with his rusty tools. We cut the grass around these stones, find the hole, dig our fingers into the dirt, fill the black metal vase with water, place in freshly bought flowers. We do this as our father had done. Remember those who have come before, those we know, and those lost to history. Our name is Romero. Thank you. All right. So the next piece, I'm going to look it up in the book because I've recently committed it to memory, but I get scared sometimes, you know. This is one that I haven't been touring around with, you know, a whole lot. So in that poem, Our Name is Romero, I reference my uncle, Frank Romero, is a very famous muralist of the Chicano movement of the 1960s, was part of a group called Los Four. So this poem is inspired, so one time I went on a field trip to LACMA, the LA County Museum of Art, there on the Miracle Mile. And I knew a lot about art, and I was talking to the docent. We were getting along really well, and I brought up, I said, hey, you know, my uncle's an artist. His name's Frank Romero. You know, he's Mexican. He paints cars. And she was like basically like, oh, you know, maybe he paints cars, not like in a painting, in famous paintings, but like, you know, is a car painter, yeah, is a mechanic, or is a car detailer. So yeah, so that's the kind of prejudice that very often we can be faced with, and the idea of that our accomplishments would somehow be a side dressing to the full course, the reality of American life. So this poem challenges that notion, and it's called Micro Machines. Mexican kid with the white skin and blue eyes knows a lot about art. This brings a smile to the face of a white museum docent. She asks the boy how he knows so much. My uncle is an artist. The boy says this without a hint of cynicism or derision. This to him is the best thing a person can be, an artist. What's your uncle's name? Frank Romero. What does your uncle paint? Cars. He paints old cars. American cars from the 1920s through 50s. LA, palm trees, familiar streets as the background, always bold in color with a zigzagged impasto stroke, the kind of thing you see that makes you immediately say, that's a Romero. Maybe he has something here. A pause from her then. There's an auto museum down the street. Maybe what you mean is he has something there. No, that doesn't seem right. Maybe what you mean is he paints cars. There's a dusty tin and wood garage under this museum, and the docent has put his uncle into it. But his uncle doesn't look the same there. His uncle with bold striped sweaters, full wild hair and beard, larger than life personality, laugh big enough to fill a room, doesn't look the same there. To her, his uncle is a tiny uncle with shaved head, brown Pendleton, navy work apron, and silver paint spray can in hand. He paints with that in place of a brush. The cars in the garage are smaller too. They're micro machines. And like them, the boy feels small and getting smaller. The world and its colors shrinking to a vanishing point because he knows what she means. I know what she meant. I couldn't expand upon these ideas fast enough. There is nothing wrong with painting cars, painting pictures of cars, or dressing like a cholo, but we are not all the same. You can't fit us all into the same stroke, paint us all with the same brush. Whatever the medium, there is nothing wrong with taking pride in your work, but what is wrong is for anyone to assume that we are a smaller people, a lesser people. What is wrong is for anyone to assume that we can't be acclaimed, can't hang in your museum. Give him the top floor because my uncle is an artist, a painter. His work has hung in galleries the world over. You can see his work in the Smithsonian, see his mural in LA by the 101, and he, like me, is a Mexican. My uncle is an artist, a painter who's painted cars that were bigger than the Mona Lisa. My uncle is an artist, a painter, and like me, he knows how to use the principle of diminution, which is making objects smaller in a piece of art to help create a sense of perspective. My uncle is an artist, a painter, and he doesn't get paid to paint. He doesn't get paid to talk about paintings. He gets paid to paint them, with checks larger than your desperate attempts to try and reframe him. And I won't let any of you make me feel small about any of us ever again. Thank you very much. All right. And I shall conclude with this is a poem about my father, and something really terrible that I said to him when I was a child. So if the last poem was about microaggressions, this poem is about internalized racism, and it's called Gorilla Arms. It was Sunday morning. My father had just gotten off work. Overtime shift, family room, pink box of donuts. My father's blue work shirt that put them on the table. Exhausted but happy, spending time with the family, his arms on the table, muscular, sweaty, heavy, hairy arms. A bratty, snotty-nosed child, I looked across the table and told him, "You look like a gorilla." It wasn't just the words. It was the cock of the head, the wrinkling of the nose, the arch of the eyebrow. It wasn't just the words. It was the sneer tucked inside of them. "You look like a gorilla." Who is the stranger who lived in my house, spent hours tinkering in the garage or lumbering out in the yard, yelled to rake up the leaves, pick up the dog poop, mow the lawn, left before I went to school, left in the middle of the night, oftentimes returned the same, always wearing that blue or orange uniform, always tired on those days, prone to anger, big, heavy, work boots, clonking and clomping throughout the house. Sometimes he was covered in dirt, his work shirt unbuttoned, chest hair out, hairy arms like gorilla sleeves. Who was this stranger? He was my dad, my father. "You look like a gorilla." It wasn't just the words, it was the inflection, it was my reflection, it was the teachers, the guest lecturers, the people on television, the parents of my friends. No one had ever told me that I should want to be like my father, blue collar, work with your hands, muscular, sweaty, heavy, hairy arms. He used them to clean ditches, to build pipe systems, to cut down trees, to clear fields and embankments every day. For us, you look like a gorilla. There was hate there, disgust there, dehumanization, like how creationists can find nothing more filthy than to say that humans are descended from monkeys. chimpanzees, like how racists call Mexicans cockroaches, cackle when they hear La Cucaracha, the Nazis called the Jews rats, blacks were depicted for decades as more ape than Homo sapien. My brother commented on how they treated him at work. They treat me like their workhorse, a beast of burden. This was his first admission. This was racism. They treated him like a Mexican, and he hated it. My father was as stubborn as a bull, as strong as an ox, with muscular, sweaty, heavy, hairy arms, gorilla arms, the arms that built our house, the arms that hugged my mother, that carried me as a child. I looked at those arms that Sunday morning and told him, "You look like a gorilla." Everything stopped. Everyone was shocked. Soon there was shouting, screaming. I ran, crying, out of the house and into the backyard. You look like a gorilla. I will regret saying that for the rest of my life. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get into our next featured reader for our afternoon, evening rather. The sun's still out, but
The solstice is like 20 days away.
Oh, nice.
The sun will be setting at 8 o'clock soon.
All right, so let's see here. So I'm at a crisis point here. Are you still waiting? Oh, okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next reader, Briana Muñoz. She is a poet from Southern California. She is the author of Loose Lips, a poetry collection published by Prickly Pear Publishing, and of Everything is Returned to the Soil, published by FlowerSong Press. Her work has been published in the Bravura Literary Journal, the Dryland Literary Journal, the Oakland Arts Review, in Boundless, the anthology of the Rio Grande Valley International Poetry Festival, and the anthology Reimagine America, among others. She is an indigenous Mexica danzante. She is also the co-creator of Hairy Leg Lingerie, a creative collective birthed to highlight local talent from the non-binary, femme, and trans communities. Brianna currently serves as the volunteer event coordinator for the Sims Library of Poetry and the volunteer fundraising coordinator for the Luis J. Rodriguez for California Governor 2022 campaign. Please welcome Briana Muñoz.
I'm going to stand up. I find it hard to read while I'm sitting. Thank you. So I'm going to read a poem titled How to Reimagine America. It's a short one. How to Reimagine America. Turn back to its origins, earth, water, wind, and fire. Call it by its name, Turtle Island. Ask its pronouns, ask for consent. Listen to its trees and its bird songs, and realize that there are many Americas, North, Central, and South America, but that simultaneously we are one America. Rid it of its pipelines and its oil train terminals, undress it like you do your lover in hushed bedrooms. Start at its colonial border wall. Watch it slowly bring it down like a pair of Victoria's Secret panties. Then move your attention to its prison systems. Better yet, uncage everyone, remove its monuments of white supremacy like we're having a store closing sale. Replace them with more trees. Thank you. So my book is titled Everything is Returned to the Soil, and it was important to me to translate some of the poetry into Spanish. Spanish was my first language, and now I can hardly speak it with my grandmother. And that's just what happens when you go to school, and I rarely speak Spanish unless I'm at grandma's house or, whatever it is. So, but yeah, so it's a bilingual collection, and I was going through it like yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, and 'cause I guess I just don't really sit down and like go through my book often, so I'm like, oh, that's in there. But there's a lot of my poetry is kind of, there's a lot of like eroticism, like hints of eroticism, and I was just noticing in that poem, it's like I write a lot on like connection to Mother Earth, but also like Victoria's Secret panties in that poem. I don't know, it's funny. So anyway, I'm gonna read a poem titled Elvira. That's my grandmother's name, and she lives here in Escondido, and I'm actually in LA, so it's nice to be back here. Grandma tells me about the slaughtering of her name in primary school, how 6 letters converted to 4, V-E-R-A, Elvira means truth. Grandma tells me about handsome men in zoot suits, slick back, polished shoes. She tells me with a smirk. Grandma is a Taurus, a bull but sentimental. She cries to Sarah McLachlan shelter dog commercials, among other things, like the graduation song in Church Boy singing Ave Maria. Grandma tells me to find a boyfriend but not to marry, and make sure to ask me for updates every single time I visit. Grandma tells me about Grandpa's infidelity, tells me to lock my windows and to watch out for the viejos and the hippies. Grandma tells me her frijoles de la olla secrets. She says she always keeps a pot of them in the fridge, offers me fresh squeezed lemonade or jugo de naranja, with which her small hands craft. My grandma tells me a lot of things, a storyteller like myself. She tells me about losing her son, and I can hear her cries and the light beat against wood creaking of her voice. Thank you. I never read that poem, and it's funny because she has a copy of my book. And going back to the hints of eroticism, I'm like, oh, Grandma, I'm sorry. But she goes, did I really tell you not to marry? Yeah, I did. This is titled For My Mother, Life of the Party Woman. I am a wild woman, greñuda woman, shut your lips type of woman. Dance on tabletops kind of woman. I am made from my grandmother's stubborn rib, and my great-grandmother's had too much to drink liver. Made from the dirt on the faces of children at play, and from the sweat of my father working underneath a summer sun. I am a wild woman, uncensored kind of woman, a you don't like me, well you can leave sort of woman. Don't need your permission kind of woman. As a matter of fact, I make the rules type woman. I am a warrior doll woman, but a treat others with kindness woman. I am a loose-lipped woman, word vomit woman, hair flying, gone with the wind woman, scares the men away woman. Made from the hands that patty cake masa into tamales, made from hooves of horses, and my mother's soul's dancing tap-tap for the universe. I am a wild woman. Thank you. I'll read one more, and it's not in this book, but this is titled If I Were to Turn Myself into a Poem. If I were to turn myself into a poem, I'd give myself a pair of legs so that I could travel to Santiago, Chile, the place of Neruda's death, and backpack to Borges's Buenos Aires. If I were to turn myself into a poem, I'd bring with me in my transformation all of the heartache, the way my mother's gentle body laid atop a pull-out couch next to Dad's hospital bed nightly, or the way my father never climbed back into his leather-worked saddles. I'd bring with me everything I still have not allowed the heart to write about. If I were to turn myself into a poem, I'd be an erotic poem, slithering around the neck, the fingertips, and into the optic nerve of the reader. They would shut their door to safely consume me as a poem. If I were to turn myself into a poem, my format would consist of hilltops and flatlands, and it would appeal to all five senses. In reading the poem, you'd pick up notes of sin and sacred sage. If I were to turn myself into a poem, I would flow like the Snake River of the Pacific Northwest. I'd move sly and easy. The reader would close their eyes and put their hands on the waist of the poem, dance and wrestle and even tongue kiss the poem. If I were to transform myself into a poem, I would unlearn the language of all white male poets taught to me in grade school. Instead, I would be a Mother Earth poem, a sacred soil poem, a floricanto poem. If I were to turn myself into a poem, that poem better be no saint. That poem would be a chain smoker playing dominoes in back alleys. That poem would have a thick accent like Theo Chewy and a gut from pork chicharron dishes. If I were to turn myself into a poem, I'd be a melting pot of all poems. 21st century poems, poems that I've read and reread and involuntarily released a gasp. Poems that I didn't want to end, that I wanted to live inside of. Poems that I've read and shouted to the page, "Oh, you clever, clever bastard." And the poems of all the poets we have lost. And in my body of a poem, they resurrect and reincarnate, as poets are immortal, clinking glasses of champagne amongst libraries and bookshelves. Thank you.
All right. Our final reader for this evening with FlowerSong Press is Sonia Gutierrez. Sonia Gutierrez is the recipient of the Tomás Rivera Book Award 2021 for her novel Dreaming with Mariposas. In 2021, Dreaming with Mariposas also received an honorable mention for the Isabel Allende Most Inspirational Fiction Award from the International Latino Book Awards. She is the author of Spider-Woman, La Mujer Araña, and co-editor for The Writer's Response. She teaches critical thinking and writing in women's gender and sexuality studies. Her bilingual poetry collection, Paper Birds, Feather by Feather, Pájaros de papel, Pluma por pluma, is forthcoming fall 2022. Presently, she is working on her first illustrated book, The Adventures of a Burrito Flying Saucer, and teaching in Cyberland. Please give it up for Sonia Gutierrez.
So I think it's so beautiful because I've known David and I know Matt from years ago, and also Brianna. So I think it's incredible that the last time that we talked was over in Logan Heights, and we were talking about the forthcoming works that we were gonna be publishing soon, and we were talking about blurbs, and then both Matt and David put me in perspective, and they said, Sonia, come on, somebody like you shouldn't have a problem getting a blurb. And so I want to read you, because of Matt and David, I want to read you a blurb that's forthcoming for the Paper Birds one. So this is a blurb by Jimmy Santiago Vaca.
Woo!
Ow! Sonia Gutierrez's poems dive into the blue turquoise feathers of the light along the border. Within the cultural waves of raza, tumult, and celebration, her poems strike the bone like drumsticks. These poems pat the heart like a mother's loving hand, lock arms with sisters and brothers like a fellow guerrillista. She sings from the blood like the ocean waves the shore. She spirals her poetic magic until transformation occurs, and we are changed. Bravo. Jimmy Santiago Vaca, author of No Enemies poems. So I'm just going to read you one poem from this one. Yeah, he's a screenwriter for Blood In, Blood Out. Okay, Wicked World. I was 5 when the world opened itself up to me. Open-eyed, I peeked through its invisible curtain as our neighbor pushed Elvia off our second floor apartment. She, a white American goddess, unfurled her strength as Elvia scurried down the stairs. And then I was 6, when father told me the story of Garibay, when the town's eyes saw him gaze at male bodies for too long, the way only men should look at women's bodies. The town's tongues lacerated words like an uncontained Gomorrah chisme on fire. Days later, they found Garibay quartered with a machete at the bottom of a ditch. I was 5 when the world opened itself up to me. It still does. It still often does. Pinks, pastels, and ruffles could not veil these dark eyes, because the world had opened itself up to me for this wicked world to see. It still does. It still often does. So that's the opening poem to that. Thank you, David and Matt, right? Saying, come on, Sonia. Snap out of it. Okay, so from Dreaming with Mariposas, took me, this is actually a twin of my Quetzal, who's in the audience here. So this book was born when Quetzal would go to sleep, and then I had an epiphany, you know, that moment where you're like, I'm a professor, I'm a poet, what else is gonna happen with my life? My students can write better than me because I taught them. So I was teaching them how to do beautiful writing. I told my students I wanted them to write like writers. Like, I want you to move away from the 5-paragraph essay. So I want you to move away from the 5-paragraph essay. If you want your paragraph to be like 1 sentence, go for it. Like if you want your paragraph to be 1 word, go for it, right? So the goal was to move away, and then when I started getting their work back, I was like, wow, this is incredible. What's gonna happen, Sonia? And so then this was born. So a novel was born, but nobody taught me how to write a novel. Nobody taught me how to write poetry. So anyway, 13 years later, FlowerSong Press, we are the writers, and it was published December 14th, that was 2021, right? Because it's already going to be, or 2020, right at the end, right at the end. And so it won the Tomás Rivera Book Award. I got a Kirkus review, and it was kind of like, oh my gosh, should I get a Kirkus review? It was like, you know, founded in the 30s or 40s, and I was like scared. I was like, what if it's a negative review? It's going to be out there. So guess what? I got a positive review. So I'm going to contact our publisher, Edward Vidaure, who's been very supportive of all of us, and I'm going to ask him to please send me some more stickers, so that way you can have some stickers here at your Barnes & Noble and Encinitas. Thank you so much, Harrison and everybody.
What I said earlier before we started was, David, you and I have been talking for about a year now, and we had to keep putting it off for various reasons, partially because of COVID and stuff. So finally it's happened, and now that it's finally happened, we got all of you together. So this has just been fantastic. So thank you for being here.
So, remember I was telling you about how the book was born? So I was in a room, and that room didn't have a door. And this room, the office, was a dark, deep blue. And I stared through the window, through the door, and there was a photograph of my abuelita. And my abuelita, indigenous, gorgeous woman, she's in the back in the book. And I saw that photo, and it was like it happened. Like I just started writing. So one of the vignettes is called Dreaming Without Aura. So I never had grandparents, so I had to create them for this character. Chofi, her name's Chofi Sofia. Dreaming Without Aura. Ay, qué bonito es volar a las 2 de la mañana, a las 2 de la mañana. Ay, qué bonito es volar, ay, mamá, la bruja. It was November, in the time of memories and dreams. She wore her long black hair down over her shoulders, and her favorite gown touched her calves. Her bare feet were dry like the desert dust, craving for a drop of water. Under the chirimoya tree, she sat on a concrete bench for a few minutes while she took in her surroundings that looked like her home, and then continued on her journey. She saw the rabbit in the moon through the almond tree heavy with flowers. It glistened and danced feverishly as she passed by. Even though she tried smelling. She could smell the eucalyptus tree permeating in the backyard. Something else called her, a smell more powerful, the smell of the bright orange cempasúchil flowers. As she got closer to the backside of the house, she recognized the geranium clay pots lining alongside the house. The estafiate and the ruda plants were well taken care of. For a second she thought they were hers. But as she approached the bedroom window, she saw her face reflected. She didn't know if she was La Llorona, or a bruja, or the two of them in one. Through her eyes, she didn't look terrifying, not to herself, and that stopped that. Looking at her face did startle her a bit, but what startled her most were her feet. They weren't touching the ground. Her body moved slowly, heavy with time on her shoulders, to her altar, where she found her picture in a wooden frame, the only picture of her, the one with her hair tied in a long braid. The candle's flame flickered, and the red, bright pink, royal blue, green, and yellow ribbon hanging from the window's frame swayed as she moved to a corner in the living room next to La Virgen de Guadalupe. Her favorite dish, mole rojo, frijoles, and arroz, was still warm with her daughter and granddaughter's hands. Next to the mole, her family had placed a glass of water to quench her thirst. She remembered who she was. She was Aurora. And her granddaughters, Paloma and Sofia, had guided her to the place of the living. After reuniting with family members placed next to her on the family altar, Aurora then visited Elena, sleeping next to her husband. She found her in the same position she slept as a child. Her Elenita had her beloved Fortino's hair, wavy like the ocean waves. Staring at her daughter's grown woman's face, Aurora leaned over and kissed her daughter on her forehead. Elena woke up, stayed still and asked, "Mama, eres tú?" With no answer and heavy with sleep, she went back to dreaming. In the morning, I woke up confident. My My abuelita had visited the altar both Paloma and I had set up for the night before. I sat on my bed, recollecting my dream, then rose to my feet and stared out the window. I had dreamt I was walking. Oh, I was floating like Ramona, but wasn't sure if the woman in my dream was Abuelita Aurora, Abuja, or La Llorona. It was November, in the time of Ay de mi llorona, 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 llévame al río. Tápame con tu rebozo, llorona, porque me muero de frío. With just one short little vignette. So these are little vignettes. If you remember reading The House on Mango Street, Sandra Cisneros inspired me. And also Tomás Rivera, Y no se lo tragó la tierra, The Earth Did Not Devour Him. Those two were my model texts. These were my teachers. One of them was, deceased, but he's my teacher in spirit. I could see what a vignette looked like, and that's how I did it. No creative writing for me. Okay, so I want to read this one because the little mariposita told me to read this one. That's so cool. Okay, let's see. Las muy. At our new school, San Marcos Elementary, no more than 100 feet away from our house on West San Marcos Boulevard, we were las que se creían muy, the ones who thought they were all that. Not because we were spoiled, but because we only spoke English at school. Ironically, the kids at our new school didn't know we were coming from Vista Santa Fe Elementary, and English only at school. I see, se creen muy, said Yanni with her imposing short stature as she dug her little white tennis shoe on the playground's black asphalt and pushed her small frame forward with her arms crossed. Somebody I went to school with is in the audience, so I'm inspired by these people, so you might have already figured it out. So at school, the voices echoed through the hallways as we walked by. They only want to speak English. Look at them. They only speak English. Se creen muy. Se creen muy. But because Miss Clifton, our teacher, talked privately to Yenny and the girls who taunted us most and claimed why we only spoke English at school, the bullying stopped. Many of the students at San Marcos Elementary had been born here, but they didn't speak English. We, the Martinez sisters, had become miniature robots with on and off switches, programmed to only speak English at school and Spanish at home, even when Dad wasn't around. Father had made it very clear we would only be speaking Spanish at home. Aquí, en esta pinche casa, solo se habla español, he would say as his throat tightened and turned rooster red. And our Mexican father was no joke. For someone like my father, who upheld Mexican standards since it would be embarrassing for a Mexican born to raise children who didn't speak Spanish. Or God forbid, Mexican parents raised a child with a Pocho accent who spoke Spanglish, or a child who didn't speak Spanish at all. One Christmas, the school sent us home with a Christmas gift booklet. If our class sold the most items, we would get an ice cream party as a reward. And because I wanted to win an ice cream treat, I walked on East Los Angeles Street next to her apartment complex, selling what my parents couldn't afford. I stood at the door on East Indian Rock Street, feeling overwhelmed by the flood of questions and answered. I don't speak Spanish. When when those words came out of my mouth, I didn't know where they had come from. What I did know is Dad would never find out about this incident. Never, never, nunca, nunca.
Yes, please. May I start with a question? So, could you tell us all about the writing processes of the books? And is FlowerSong Press owned by David or?
No, it's not. It's run out by Edward Viguare out of McAllen, Texas.
Okay.
So I'm fortunate enough to be based here in Southern California.
Right.
So we just run a lot of events together as
Yeah.
a loose form collective of writers and poets. So yeah, let's go ahead and I guess we should start in order.
How did I write the books? So some of the books, poems in City on the Second Floor are actually older than the poems in Mowing Leaves Grass. Mowing Leaves Grass came together mostly during the Trump presidency, but it came out of the general kind of politics out of really kind of responding to what I saw, which was these things that were bigger than that presidency, which is just that this changing demographics was causing this really fascist movement, and so this book is kind of a response to that. So I took poems that I'd already written that were kind of along those lines, and that's what Mowing Leaves Grass became. That's why it's big in the ethnic studies kind of movement. It's taught at I think at this point I know of 16 different schools that teaches in the ethnic studies departments, including Berkeley and Madison and some other places. I just found out it's taught at ELAC too. That was cool. But it's taught all over the place, but mostly in ethnic studies courses. And that was kind of the idea I had behind writing it. So it did its job. The other one, See on the Second Floor, I wrote that mostly during the pandemic. Again, some of the poems were older than that, but I'd say about 2/3 of it I wrote during the pandemic. And that was during that time I was having a year-long discussion with Jose Prado, a professor, a sociologist out of Cal State, Dominguez Hills, HG Sociology there. And we had a year-long discussion where we read the book Das Kapital by Karl Marx. And so I wrote this book kind of out of those conversations alongside these poems that I had written. And so if Mowing Leaves Grass is an ethnic studies course text, then See on the Second Floor is very much a more of a like a sociological Marxist geography type text. And it's a few months old. It's only taught on 6 campuses, but don't be judgmental. It's only so I'm pretty excited about that. And in the spring or in the fall over at Cal State Northridge, supposedly we'll see what happens. There's going to be like a big symposium of these 7 or 8 different professors that teach my work, and they're all going to discuss what it's like to teach. Great Matt Sedillo. It's pretty kind of interesting. Wow. So I'm pretty excited about that.
So would you like to speak to your writing process?
Yeah, I was talking to Alexis earlier. Alexis is right in the back. So this book, like I was telling you, was born 14 years ago. So I'm a professor, I'm a poet, I grade a lot, we prep a lot as teachers. So I'm that responsible professor that if I'm teaching, I have to ignore my creativity sometimes. So I just wait for a spring break or a Thanksgiving, and I just can't help it. It's like my brain is wired to my students first. So that means that it took me a while. It took me a long time to write this book. We're very lucky, right? Professors have supported us. So we're part of a class at Berkeley, right? Let's see, Palomar has taught it for Chicano Studies, Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies, Professor Rodella at the university, Miracosta, Cal State LA, I just found out last week, Professor Olga Garcia out of Los Angeles is teaching Dreaming with Mariposas. A lot of beautiful things have happened to Dreaming with Mariposas. I feel very lucky and very proud of my Mariposita.
So to speak some more on my writing process, so once again, it took me over a decade to put this collection together, and very similar to Matt, while you're writing, you're not always necessarily, as a poet, writing on a particular theme. Some poets are capable of doing that, and that's kind of my goal, is to move into that next phase where I'm not just waiting for inspiration to strike, but I'm deliberately setting out a course to create work on a particular topic, a particular theme, have a particular style. But in the meantime, you kind of write free form, and you write, what's around what inspires you. So I'm inspired by rap, by classical poetry, by spoken word, mostly at the 2000s. That to me was the golden era. I kind of think that it's, that's my favorite era. A lot of music crossovers, a lot of hooks, sung in there, and that kind of stuff. Very dynamic. Theater, also movies. I'm actually a film major. I graduated from USC with a degree of critical studies in film, so I bring a lot of film language analysis to the way that I write poetry. I often think about dissolves and crosscuts, and so it's really strange that I should be a poet, but that the way that I think of poetry is not as poetry, but as film. And a lot of the poems that didn't make it into this collection have made it into the sequel to my first book, which was self-published, Diamond Bars. It's going to be Diamond Bars 2. And the process of writing that book led me to write a murder mystery novel. So yes, I'm hoping that will go far, and that's part of a planned trilogy of murder mysteries exploring Spanish colonialism and the roots of that, tying in, and the massacre of the indigenous populations here in Southern California, all through a pop genre. So yeah.
That would make a good movie too.
Alexis was asking me how long it took me to write this book, and honestly, I think it was about a year. So when I hear, everyone saying a decade or whatever, I'm like, oh gosh. For my side of it, right? I think and similar to what David was saying. For my next book, I'd like to be more zoned in on a particular theme or topic. For this collection, it was kind of like you were saying, it was kind of free form. It was really what was inspiring me at the time, which was really around the time that I started my journey with reclaiming my indigeneity in the form of indigenous traditional dancing. And that kind of really opened up so much, and so that all kind of lands in here. But then, kind of putting all, I like to say I have a couple different selves. So, my political self and my indigenous self and my spiritual self, kind of all just mixed into this. And one of our friends, Odilia Galvan Rodriguez, she wrote a blurb, and I just really liked what she said, which was, she has no problem juxtaposing sin with the sacred. So that is really a great way to explain this book.
Okay, one more quick thank you all so much for coming, and please, one more big round of applause for that. So please, copies are for sale, and if you'd like to meet the authors afterwards, and they'll sign them for you here. Thank you so much for coming. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.